right, sports fans, welcome to this edition of Talkin Hockey. I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr., and before we get into it, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor here, and that is thepuckshopshere.com. Discount hockey gear available online, and receive an additional 10% discount when you enter the promo code Inside Sports upon checkout, and always free shipping on all orders over $75. So a terrific show today. We're going to cover free agency in the NHL, and also we're going to get down to a little congratulations because the Hall of Fame class for 2012 was just announced. And of course, as you know, I cannot do this alone. I got to have myself some backup. So again, the pride of Eastern Canada. You know him from hockey54.com. You follow him on Twitter at theschwartz54. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Lightning, Lonnie Schwartz.
Nice to be on the show once again because, hey, it's post-Canada Day and there's some UFA fallout, unrestricted free agencies falling from the sky onto different parts of land in the United States and Canada where they look a little unfamiliar. And then some, of course, just landing right back where they were, and you don't understand why they even got an agent to begin with.
Exactly. That's your homeboy, Marty Broder, you must be referring to. But, I looked at my calendar here. I got a calendar here in the U.S., and it has Canada Day listed as yesterday, but then it says Canada Day observed, and that's today. So is that like a holiday for you? Was that what that means? Or?
It's a holiday-long weekend, yes. I mean, Canada Day was officially yesterday, but we give the extra day off today, so...
Perfect.
So here
but you
we
guys
are,
don't get July 4th.
Talkin Hockey. Yes, next week, the Born on the 4th of July weekend marathon on AMC shall commence first thing at midnight. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if it's going to be on AMC at midnight. But yes,
all right,
the 4th of July, the big holiday.
Let's go ahead and get right down to it here, and that is, before we break down the free agency, let's go ahead and give it up for the Hall of Fame class of 2012. And... what do you think, Lonnie? The Russian Rocket finally gets in. Pavel Bure, part of the Hall of Fame class of 2012.
You know what? I'm going to put it this way. I'm not doubting the skills of Pavel Bure. Anybody who ever watched Pavel Bure play, it's like that guy was insanely quick, amazing hands, and as every critic says, and I shouldn't say critic, but everyone who heaps praise on him says, is that he did everything at full speed, and there's no arguing that.
That's true.
My only issue with Pavel Bure going into the Hall of Fame is I'm gonna call it the Cam Neely rule. Cam Neely was a great power forward, a defining power forward for his generation, and did a lot of great things. Scored 50 goals in 49 games, a remarkable accomplishment, especially with the injuries he endured. But you look at the overall career of Cam Neely, and you can compare it to the likes of Pavel Bure. When they were on the ice, they were spectacular. But did they have long-standing, enduring careers?
Yeah.
It's one of those guys that you give the vote because of the potential. And there's a big part of me that says you can't just vote on potential. Because then you can say, well, maybe we should draft this Lonnie Schwartz guy into the NHL. Because you know what? When he was younger, he had potential.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work that way.
Right.
You know, So that's where I sort of sit on the Pavel Bure going in, but are you denying his level of skill? No, I'm just denying the credentials. Baseball Hall of Fame, there are minimum numbers you have no matter how nice of a guy you were, or if you hit a home run into the next county, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
You get voted on based on accomplishments, right?
You know what, I agree, and that was the thing is I was on the fence for years about Pavel Bure, and to me, honestly, he's not... He just, barely belongs there. But to me, if you put in Pavel Bure, then that ends the argument. Maybe he's in there as a representative of the Alexander Mogilnys of the world, who also I've heard, which I think is ridiculous, I've heard people saying, why isn't Mogilny in the Hall of Fame? Which is, come on, you're just going to open the floodgates, or what?
Well, and that's the feeling that I have here. And you know what? I've spoken to my father-in-law at length about these things because he's a bit of a hockey historian himself, and he said, go look at the statistics and career accomplishments of guys like Dick Duff and George Armstrong. Mm-hmm. George Armstrong being the last captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs to hoist the cup. Dick Duff, a playoff performer, but you look at numbers, and it's like I don't even think they cracked the 300 goal mark. Never mind, 400 or 500. And Dino Ciccarelli, no matter what you thought of him off the ice and what he may have done on the ice with that whole bad boy persona on the ice, because he did a couple of indiscretions. The guy had over 600 career goals, and he had to wait, 10 years almost for him to get into the Hall?
Exactly.
See, that's where we have argumentation here, right?
Well, you know
that's
what?
Where we put our lawyer hats on.
And here's another one, though. When you look at one who got in, and you can look at, you look at his career, he played well. He never really won anything as far as Stanley Cup-wise go. But then again, maybe wasn't surrounded with the best talent in the world, and that is, Matt Sundin. He got in, hollow number 13, jersey hoisted to the rafters in Toronto there. What are the feelings on Mr. Sundin?
I think Sundin, I can remove myself from the Toronto-colored eye goggles there because I'm not a huge Maple Leafs fan. but the fact is he's the highest-scoring Swedish-born player of all time, right? He's got those numbers. He may not have the individual awards, but you can compare him to, say, almost Adam Oates. Adam Oates didn't have any of those awards either, but that's because of the people in the league at the time.
Right.
You're going to fault Adam Oates for not winning a Stanley Cup? No. He can't win it by himself. Neither could Sundin. So that's where you apply those, did he have the right teammates around to make that team better? Because Matt Sundin made guys better.
He did.
Adam Oates made guys better. But you can't start handing out 3 Hart trophies because you feel good about giving out a Hart trophy. They just don't win it. Adam Oates wasn't going to win another Ross because a guy named Gretzky and Lemieux were sort of busy doing it, and Yager, a little sprinkle of Yager in too.
And Mark Messier.
You just can't start doing that. There are certain accomplishments and awards and team success you can look at as your benchmark, but then there's also, look at the numbers too. And Sundin's numbers are irrefutably Hall of Fame worthy, as are, and I'm ecstatic. You have no idea when I heard he was going in. My roof almost had like a dent in it shaped like my head, and that was Adam Oates.
All right, let's talk Adam Oates. There we go. And, the same day that he was named to the Hall of Fame, he's also named as the new coach of the Washington Capitals. So a huge day overall for Adam Oates. And he was one of my favorite players. When he was playing, you had, like we said, that glut of great centers through the 80s and 90s. I mean, Gretzky and Messier and Mario Lemieux and Joe Sakic and Steve Yzerman and Ron Francis.
Yeah. You gotta consider these factors too when you look at a player's accomplishment. Adam Oates, in the history of the National Hockey League, he is 6th all-time in assists. You want to talk about a guy making people better?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy made Chris Simon a near 30-goal scorer. Hello, Chris Simon?
Yeah. All right, so
congratulations to Adam Oates. Long-awaited, well-deserved Adam Oates in the Hall of Fame, along with Pavel Bure and the sweet Swede Matt Sundin, who never really got the appreciation he probably deserved while he was here in Toronto.
And, one of the reasons we talk about, the era they played in, the other member, Joe Sakic, does that even require any type of explanation at all? We just say Sakic's in the Hall of Fame, moving on, right?
Moving on. I mean, you'd have to be totally brainless to not think that Joe Sakic doesn't deserve to be in there. And again, another guy who didn't exactly win all of the individual trophies because he was behind a lot of greatness, but when it came cup time, he wanted to see. He hoisted that cup a couple of times in Colorado, and he's the big reason why. Am I not mistaken that Joe Sakic overtook the likes of Maurice Richard and Glenn Anderson in the rankings of game winners in terms of playoff lore?
Joe Sakic, Sakic was fantastic, and again, he was one of those. There's 3 guys I look at who really had what I call the wrist shot from hell. Joe Sakic was one, Mark Messier was another, and the other went in last year, and that was Mark Howe, who could snap off a wrist shot with the best of them.
Well, I'll tell you, Joe, when he retired, everybody said, surefire bet. No, like some people even said waive the waiting period. I'm like, well, come on. There's very few people you waive the waiting period for. But yes, Joe Sakic in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him. And some guys on the waiting list like Shanahan. Look, Shanahan, I'll say this about Shanahan. Should he be in ahead of, say, guys like Pavel Bure? I almost have to say yes. Because then there's the politics game, though. How long has Bure been waiting? But Brendan Shanahan was looked as a power forward component to winning cups, right? Who do we want to add? He helped win the cup, but would you have won without Shanahan? I think Detroit was doing okay before they got Shanahan, and he was a nice addition, but wasn't the addition that they absolutely needed to win. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of the other end of my body here, but
Shanahan was the linchpin. I remember when they picked him up, and they picked up Shanahan. He was to be the guy who put them over the top. Now, as you know, in Detroit Red Wings lore, what they really needed was somebody to beat down Claude Lemieux to put them over the top. But Shanahan was definitely a part of that Yzerman-Shanahan era. I wonder if Shanahan had not been riding shotgun, but he definitely belongs in there. What about Jeremy Roenick? He didn't get in. Now, another old schooler, and that is his name comes up all the time, and you see him at different events, and you say, who's that? Oh, that's right, I remember. What about Phil Housley? Now, should we just give up on the highest scoring American-born defenseman ever getting into the Hockey Hall of Fame?
I really think he deserves his shot, too. Again, here we're talking about numbers and people who, like the debate about the Hockey Hall of Fame. Like here in Toronto Talk Radio, it was just off the chart. It's not always it's not saying this guy belongs. It's who should have been in.
Right.
And here we are carrying on this conversation because that's what makes the Hockey Hall of Fame so different from everybody else's. I don't want to sound like I'm a parrot repeating what other people say, but I mean it's hard not to agree with it. When you look at the stringent qualifications you have for baseball, and if you don't make it on a certain percentage of a ballot, you're never on there again.
Right.
Like your name doesn't even come up. Right? And it hurts especially here in Toronto because, we had Joe Carter, a major component of 2 World Series championships, yet he's not even going to be on the ballot ever again.
Hey, Joe Carter's not a Hall of Famer, though.
But that's exactly it. Yeah. There's a certain nostalgia with players that we associate with, and would they be nice to have in the Hall of Fame? Yes. But should they be in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
No. And that's the problem with the Hockey Hall of Fame. We always have this discussion.
And then there's, one who came up who was eligible and didn't make it in, and I think, in my opinion, should never make it in, although he was a character for a lot of years. But Cujo, Curtis Joseph, Lonnie, you're Mr. Goaltender. Talk to me, man. Talk to me.
Curtis Joseph was just surpassed by Martin Broder as the losingest goaltender of all time. Although the fact is Martin Broder is also the winningest goaltender of all time. And if we are, again, to see the parallel in baseball, Cy Young has a little award named after him, and he's also the losingest pitcher in the history of baseball as well. Just comes with the amount of games you play. Curtis Joseph is the most overrated goaltender of his generation. I've said this for the better part of a decade because wherever he's gone, he's been good enough to get you somewhere, but never good enough to get you over the top somewhere. He's never been a difference maker.
Right.
He's never won an individual award. He cost Canada the Canada Cup years ago against the U.S., where he let up one of the dumbest goals I've ever seen. Like I almost never leave my feet for a shot. Yet for a point shot, Curtis Joseph jumps, and I think it was Brett Hull deflected it under his feet. I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, that was a defining moment for me. It stuck in my head.
Yeah.
He gets you past a first round, and maybe he gets you to the semifinal, in your conference, but he never gets you to the cup. He doesn't win you an Olympic medal. He doesn't win you anything.
Right.
He's Curtis Joseph. He was a good goaltender.
He was Cujo. That's it. He was Cujo.
Yeah, he was Cujo.
Yeah.
He's a good goaltender, but was he ever top 5? No. Was he ever top 10? Maybe, but Like, I never understood what was so special about Curtis Joseph. I'm sorry.
Well, what it was is, honestly, he had a really cool nickname. That's all. He was Cujo. Come on, man. He was Cujo.
Thanks, Stephen King, for that one.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. We thanked all our Hall of Famers. But, it's all about free agency now. Canada Day passed. Free agency is upon us. The frenzy. So, we had, like you said, Marty Broder for the first time in his life gets an agent, and that leads to him just re-signing with New Jersey Devils. Johan Hedberg signed with the Devils also because he is Marty's caddy, as we all know. In L.A., they're getting the band back together. They re-signed Dustin Penner. Simon Gagne is still under contract, so it looks like the whole team is going to be back on the ice next year. There was still the speculation of were they going to be in the Zach Parise sweepstakes or not. It's beginning to look like not, because I would think really the only way they would have gone for Zach Parise is if they had dumped both Dustin Penner and bought out Simon Gagne to make that the cap space, the room, and everything to put to get Parise on that roster.
Yeah, even then, do you have the cap space? Because
right.
You just signed Quick to a 10-year contract, and you have vital components already in place. The question I had when they started saying right after the Stanley Cup, Parise in L.A., I'm like, well, what does he really add to the team that they don't already have?
That's what I said about when they were talking about Parise going to the Flyers. Well, why would you want to take? You got all that fantastic offense in Philadelphia. That's the last thing they really almost need is another forward.
Yeah, you need that like you need a third foot.
Right.
It's irrelevant. That's why, look, when we look at the biggest splash thus far, and it is the biggest splash, is Jordan Staal, because of the statement he just made about Pittsburgh. We talked about this off air. He got offered the same contract, 10 years, $60 million by Pittsburgh, yet he said no to that to go play with his brother in Carolina. Now, he goes to Carolina. If he's going to be second fiddle to anybody, it's his brother, and there's even talk that they're going to try and convert one of them to a winger so they can play on the same line. But no matter what, Jordan Staal will either be the first-line winger to his brother Eric or vice versa, or Jordan Staal will be the second-line center. And what would he be in Pittsburgh forever? He would be behind Malkin and Crosby. Those two guys are the cornerstone, and Staal knows that he would never be part of that in its truest sense. So what's the point? And so you go back to Parise. Parise was the captain of the New Jersey Devils. He was the crown jewel of that organization in terms of offense until Kovalchuk came along. This is a guy who's a franchise first-line player. Why would he be in L.A.? There are other teams out there who need him a lot more.
Right.
Namely the Wild. And my favorite, I would love to see him in Nashville. The guys over at Section 303, Jeremy Glover, I was talking to him months ago about this. He's like, I would so love to have Parise in a Preds uniform.
Yeah.
And he would fit. Like,
well,
he can generate offense. He has speed. He knows how to play defensive systems. Like, what more do you want?
Well, if he wound up in, if he wound up in Pittsburgh, could you imagine? I mean, Parise and Crosby on one line, and then you have Neal and Malkin on the second line? That creates some tough matchups.
It'd be very tough, but again, you sort of play into maybe the ego of the player too.
Right.
Am I going to be that guy? And when you say Crosby and you say Malkin, you're not.
Right.
And that's just me saying the personal side of things. Maybe that's the reason why Ryan Suter hasn't said, okay, Nashville, I'm just going to sign right away, because Weber's the cheese there, man. It's the top shelf cheddar.
That's true. That's true. Not when it comes to the NHL awards, but anyways, we covered that last week about him being a Norris Trophy stepchild, but I won't get into that again. And now also,
we don't need to.
A little bit more drama is, from out here on the West Coast, Bobby Ryan, who recently signed, a couple seasons ago, signed a new contract with the Ducks in the 2010 offseason. Now he's kind of disgruntled, saying that, the Ducks have not shown that they really want him to stay here. The trade rumors are swirling. And I guess from what I understand, which I am not able to substantiate, but I guess it was he was that close to going to Buffalo in exchange for Ryan Miller. When Miller got that concussion, that's kind of put the kibosh on that whole thing. But Bobby Ryan, when I look at his numbers, though, over his career, last 4 full seasons, 31 goals, 35 goals, 34 goals, 31 goals, and he's a plus 37 rating. What that makes that's what I call someone who is shall I say, a legitimate 30-goal scorer in this league.
Well, you do it 4 years in a row, and
right.
30 goals is a plateau that most players would beg to achieve. Like, that's a bona fide first or second liner, depending on what team we're talking about here. And Bobby Ryan is a heck of a hockey player. Any team, you say this very seldom, but any team would be, like you said, Pittsburgh, okay? Bobby Ryan would definitely be another fiddle to Crosby and Malkin. But would he look good there? Would he be a right fit there? Absolutely he would be. He's not Zach Parise type, right? He's not the captain of the team, but he would love to be in a place like, I'm glad you brought up Pittsburgh. He'd be great there.
Exactly.
But that's not the trade that apparently is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the Ducks have been doing a lot, though, as far as revamping. They dumped Wisniewski on draft day, and now Sheldon Brookbank has gone off the blue line. He's gone to Chicago, I believe. They just signed Sheldon Sorey just yesterday. So they're really kind of revamped. You look at their top 7 picks, 5 of them were defensemen. So they're definitely looking at their blue line there in Anaheim. And
Bobby Ryan could bring a bona fide defenseman along the way, because do you really need another goaltender? Do you need a number 1 goaltender in Anaheim? Do you?
I think Hiller's a pretty darn good goaltender. He had the problems with vertigo, but other than that, and as long as that does not come back and continue to be a factor, I think they're fine in net with Jonas Hiller. So Anaheim is it's a strange situation there. Like I've told people, as I cover a lot of their games, and you just get the feeling when you go there that just something is not exactly right. Something that's filtering down to the on ice, because they play so well at times, and at other times you see them and I can't believe this is the team I just watched 2 days ago. So I don't know.
Well, we'll see with the coaching change and a long-term, full season, I should say, not long-term, but a full season Bruce Boudreau will bring in terms of stability to how that team is going to look, right?
Exactly.
He only had what? Half a season, if that, with Carlisle getting the boot and then eventually landing in Toronto. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, because Boudreau did a great job when he came into Washington. Unfortunately, his welcome got waved away and said, hey, thanks for coming. Couldn't win a cup with you. So long. And Adam Oates now, of course, being the coach of the team, bringing us back to
Well, the problem was
earlier in the show.
When they forced Boudreau to really get into a defensive system. That was when things just kind of went belly up. It wasn't.
You put a scheme together that matches the skill set on your team, and it worked for so long. You needed a couple tweaks maybe to have some defensive responsibility, but that's an entirely different discussion.
Right.
But we'll see what happens with Anaheim come the full season. I know that's close to you because you got a bevy of beauties. You got L.A. and Anaheim to choose from. And if you want to go a little further, San Jose, who, by the way, could, should, and would go after Shane Doan, because that's the big talk. It's like, where should Shane Doan go? Well, if he wants to stay in the nice weather, maybe not the desert, San Jose is where it's at for Shane Doan. They need Shane Doan.
Well, right, and they need somebody. And when I look at if you look at a team that needs toughness, just remember, 2 seasons ago, they tried to bring Claude Lemieux out of retirement, who was in his 40s, to add that nastiness to their lineup. And that's really what they're missing. I think Shane Doan, and there hasn't been any talk of that really. In fact, San Jose really hasn't even been on the map as far as free agency talk or anything. But, yeah, a guy like Shane Doan, because I've looked at San Jose all these years, and the only thing I can figure is that they just lack just flat out, leadership. That guy who will just say, this is my team, I'm accountable, and that's that. Joe Thornton isn't that guy. Patrick Marleau isn't that guy, although they are fantastic talents. But still, that leadership and that just nastiness quality is something that has been lacking. That's something every team has that wins anything. There's a level of nastiness there amongst a few players, and San Jose, I think, has lacked that because they went out without a whimper against St. Louis.
And I don't think under the likes of Shane Doan being in that locker room would that ever happen again, at least while he's still in the league. And maybe he is the right choice for them, and we'll just have to see. I mean, look, we're just using our astute hockey knowledge here to guess where the best fit is. That doesn't exactly mean that's what's going to happen. I mean, I've been saying for a while that Ryan Suter should go to Detroit, but that hasn't happened yet. I mean, I don't know what offers are on his table, what the agents are saying. I mean, you also have to take into account here what other players have been offered and what they're getting. I mean,
right.
Jason Garrison comes off a one-season wonder and gets $4.6 million in Vancouver. If I'm the agent for Ryan Suter and I say, well, Ryan Suter's proven himself to be an A-level defenseman consistently for years now. If this kid off of 1 year is making 4.6, I'm starting the bidding at like $8 million. You know? I'm taking bids starting at $8 million. Do I hear 8? Do I hear 8? Do I hear 8.2, 8.2, 8.2, 8.3, 8.8, 8.7, 8.7, 9 million, 9 million. Like I'd be an auctioneer there. Like it's,
yeah, I
like
get you.
That's yeah. And the saving grace is this, and I'm glad somebody pointed this. It's not me. Somebody pointed this out earlier on. I think it was on Facebook on one of my on my feeds on Facebook. Sidney Crosby taking $8.7 million a year for basically a lifetime contract with Pittsburgh starting next season is a saving grace for a lot of GMs and owners out there. Because whether or not you look into his health and his concussion problems, if Sidney Crosby is the benchmark for talent in the National Hockey League, and it's hard to dispute that he is not, if you ever had the quote-unquote Ray Bourque salary cap in Boston, and I go back to that a lot because it was famous, you now have the Sidney Crosby salary cap for the rest of the league. Who out there can say they are worth more than Sidney Crosby to their team?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's definitely, and that's why I don't like, and that's, the flip side of a lot of the bad signings that you see is when you sign a player who's somewhat above mediocre for a ridiculous amount of money, then it just screws up the salary structure of the whole league. So I like Sidney Crosby doing that. And also, they look at long-term deals, and some guys have been reluctant to sign. I also like Jonathan Quick signing in L.A. for what he signed for. I think it's 10 years for right around $60 million, just like Jordan Stahl did in Carolina. But you look at this, okay, maybe you could have made more money at the end of it, but if you're on your deathbed and your biggest regret in life is that you only made $60 million over the course of 10 years, I think you had a pretty good life.
Yeah, I think you're doing okay for yourself there. And and maybe we could look at this way. Martin Broder just took a hometown discount after forever. I'm not sure too many people out there understand. Martin Broder, his entire career, never had an agent. He only had an attorney at hand to look over the legalities of the contract. Never once did he have an agent. And then all of a sudden, he takes on Sidney Crosby's agent, Pat Bryson, and says, yeah, I need an agent. I want to test the waters. And then that day, he still signs with New Jersey for 2 more years at 4.5. Well, he took a bit of a pay cut to stay there because he's always been a team guy. He's always been, let's make enough room so we can maybe keep the likes of Zach Parise, maybe. That's the kind of player Broder is, and he's clearly going to retire as a New Jersey Devil. But the whole hockey world went, Broder, agent, free agency, where is he going to land? And living in Toronto, you got to understand, everybody's like, oh, he'd be great here. He'd be the mentor here. They said the exact same thing about Jaguar here. He'd be a great mentor for Gustafsson. I mean, it's incredible how Homer this radio can be here in Toronto, and I'm glad I'm there with you in L.A. because I can speak my mind a little more freely and clearly with a certain sense of rationality to it. Martin Broder was never going to come to Toronto. Wasn't going to happen. And it's
Right.
clear as day now. He didn't. And there's Hedberg following along at the healthy age of, 38. So
Yeah.
someone's going to take over for Broder. Who's it going to be? No, it's not going to be Hedberg.
Well, you got to wonder, though, in New Jersey, what they're going to do. Honestly, still, and what is the future of goaltending in New Jersey? I don't know.
Well, you got him in L.A. He's the only guy that makes sense now.
Jonathan Bernier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only guy that makes any ounce of sense now.
Right, and that was, I think, something that was fueling a lot of the, the Zach Parise talk was, swapping out, giving, sending Bernier to New Jersey. That might happen, but I don't know. I don't know what goes on in the offices of GMs. It's fun to always put on the GM hat and talk about what we may or may not do, but at the end of the day, they have their agendas and we have ours.
And that's to create entertaining Ustream videos and videos for YouTube that people will go, wow, these guys actually make sense. It's incredible. Hockey guys who make sense? What's going on here?
Exactly.
At least I'd like to think so. Maybe I'm a little delusional, Charles, but I'd like to think.
Hey, you know what? It comes down to this. We don't get on any of the bandwagons or just look at what's being said and just parrot the same thing so we can all be right or wrong together. Everything that we say here on Talkin Hockey is based on something. It's not just because of what we've heard out there. It's looking at the team and assessing the needs. We're both hockey guys. We've played hockey for a long time. I'm a defenseman. Lonnie's a goalie. We see the game. The only guys who see the game better than a defenseman is the goaltender. That's the way it is, man. Forwards just kind of see what they see, man. And they see this, that, and the other here and there.
Yeah, because Pavel Bure never saw what his goal line looked like, But I digress.
Yeah. I got Alexei Kovalev online, too. He'd like to chime in on that, by the way.
What, Kovalev? Does he have the effort to do a touch-tone phone, or does he need speakerphone so he can use even less effort to make any kind of commitment to doing something?
All right, well...
Sorry, that's just a little sour grapes on Alexei Kovalev there.
Yeah. I could go on and on about him, but you know what? We've already gone a few minutes over, so it's time to just wrap things up here, Lonnie. So, you can follow Lonnie at the Schwartz54, and also online some of the most interesting interviews you'll find anywhere on hockey54.com. In fact, Lonnie, briefly, what's the latest on hockey54.com?
Well, it's summertime, man. I got to get behind the computer and maybe edit some stuff out from the vault, so stay tuned throughout the summer because there's always something entertaining in the vault from Hockey 54. So when I get these fingers moving along the keyboards and the editing all up and ready, there's going to be some more stuff coming along on Hockey 54. But in the meantime, it's fun. We do our best here on Talkin Hockey to also, keep things in line and discuss the free agents that are there and where they may land and find some new summer homes.
All right, perfect. And, of course, when things happen, you can follow him at the Schwartz54. You can follow yours truly at The Inside Sports and also my website, officialinsidesports.com. So let's go ahead and sign off here. So for Lonnie Schwartz, I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr. This is an Inside Sports production of Talkin Hockey, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.